Okay, I call this special meeting to order. Ms. Burke, would you call the roll, please?
Council President Suzanne Souter,
Here.
Councilperson Joseph Day,
Here.
Councilperson Nerman Zubaka,
Here.
Councilperson Andrew Zelt,
Here.
Councilperson Brian Mataway.
Here.
Also present, Mayor Valerie Leary, City Administrator Antonina Tantillo, and City Clerk Finance Coordinator Courtney Taylor.
Thank you. Okay, well, the first item is a discussion regarding the fiscal 26 general fund budget and grant fund budget. Ms. Tantillo, we've made some alterations since last time. Would you like to go over that with us, please?
Yes. So I made a few revisions to the numbers. The first change is to administrative expenses for salary and related expenses. We reduced that by about 23,000.
So could you tell us what page, please?
About page 15, maybe 15, 14. 14, yeah.
I think this is our fourth iteration of the budget.
Fourth
Is that correct?
iteration, that's correct.
So page 15, administrative expenses.
You see administration salaries.
Next to the last item.
So, overall, between salaries,
That's human
No.
resources.
What line? Page?
I have
It's on
15
14,
and it's at
about the
the
middle of the
top
page.
after
Oh,
all.
14, not 15.
Oh, yes.
all right, so salaries. FICA,
No, wait, that's not it. 13. 13, yes, salary at the top of the page.
That's.
If we have the same
treasurer. That's specific.
yeah, admin,
Huh?
salaries admin.
Salaries admin is on page 14, at least my page 14. I'm
City
assuming.
administrator expense dash admin, is that, or no?
Yeah, no, salaries dash admin.
Yeah,
Salary.
yes, 13 top. Yeah.
You're looking at Jim's copy. Right? Yeah, look at the other copy.
Go to 13. So, yeah, I believe that.
This is Jim's copy.
I don't know. I don't know what's over there.
Okay.
Either way, just combined for salaries, admin, FICA expense, health, life, dental, and pension, for admin. We reduced those by 23 through 37. And, those numbers were just slightly inflated the last time due to some unknowns, but we've ironed that out and that has been adjusted.
Can you give the basis, like what is it that was deleted?
I cannot.
Oh, okay, those are, okay.
Thank you.
Then if you go to the insurance number, which is my page 19 and my page 20.
Sure,
Sure.
you're at the top of 18, right?
Yes.
Okay, so, last week we had a conversation that I was working through getting some quotes for insurance. I had received a quote from a new company, one that we had previously been with, through the DFIT, insurance program with, which most municipalities are involved in. And that came in 40,000 under our, current insurance program. I did reach back out to our current insurance broker and they were able to adjust the numbers, but there's still 17,000 more. So therefore, I think I'm going to move to the new company. So I adjusted the numbers from last time and reduced the budget for the insurance by $39,881. The insurance coverage is the same or better in areas, very comparable plan. I think it's a great program. And I'm satisfied with transitioning to this other company.
And I believe you said you have worked with that company before, and in fact, Newcastle has worked with that
Correct.
company before.
Correct. And we do work with them now, as well for workers' comp.
And they've always been satisfactory in processing and so forth. Okay, thanks.
Yes. So I feel confident in that transition and it adds a great deal back to our budget.
I'm a little concerned about this. Sure.
So are you talking about for police liability? That one?
I guess questions about the change of the carrier,
Okay.
I guess. I like Portofino, I like Jessup's, I like the Mercury, I like, local small businesses. that are invested in our community, and we're invested in them. And we have a small business that's been a good partner, that employs people in our city, that is in a historic building in our corridor, that invests into our city and organizations that we believe in and that we sow into. And I just have concerns about making a switch over $17,000. When I look at,
Well, it was initially 40, it only went down to 17 after many conversations.
but when you look at, I guess, what the actual from 2021 through, I guess, 5 years or 6 years,
Mhm.
it's really not that much. It's about $9,000 or $10,000 average.
And if you go to property and liability, it's 50,
No, I'm saying property and liability.
yeah, it's 50,000.
It's gone from 98 to 144.
I think we're saying the same thing. I said we're talking about a 5 or 6 year period
Right.
that goes up about $9,000 a year. That's what I had indicated. I would imagine we have had claims. It's not like we
Yeah,
don't
of
make
course.
claims, so. Like I said, I just have concerns. I mean, if we wanna make, I think everything is not, value is not always dollars and cents. I think value is more than that sometimes. I mean, are we gonna revisit our city solicitor contract because they go up? I just wanna know what's the thought, what's the process,
Mhm.
what's the threshold?
I mean, I think we should look for all areas of opportunity, for service, quality of service and cost savings. But this is an opportunity to start with, and, we're familiar with the other program as well, being a part of it for the workers' comp.
And forgive me, I'm the most junior person on council. I know sometimes at council meetings, contracts come to, city council for voting, for deliberation, et cetera. So is that the case? Is that not the case? Is there a dollar threshold that triggers it? Is it, like, is there a policy? Is it just whatever people want? I just wanna know.
It just depends on what it is, yeah.
I mean, the insurance is renewed every year.
Mhm.
So just like when I look at my homeowners and car insurance and so forth, I compare, could I get a better deal somewhere else? And do you know when we switched from Trident to the current vendor, and then now we're considering switching back?
Exactly, 5 years ago, if not more.
Okay. So all of the numbers on here going back to 2021 would represent with our current vendor.
I believe so.
Right, I mean, if you look at some of the numbers, it's almost like stagnant in some of the years. So like, I wonder if some of this stuff is not necessarily them, but it's just an industry, change in the industry, right? Like with some of these tariffs and things that
I
are
think all
talking about.
insurance companies are facing higher numbers, just as a result of.
And we're comparing two vendors who offer the same product
Right.
and are offering them at different prices. So they all face the same general cost increases that have applied to all insurance.
But I mean, I do understand what Councilman Mataway is saying. I mean, it is a vendor that's in the district. You know what I mean? We always say we want to keep our businesses here. You know what I mean? Where would we be without our businesses? And they're a vendor that contributes to the city. I'm not saying I disagree or agree with the price, but I certainly see the angle he's taking here is that it is somebody that contributes regularly to the city and is in the, in a historic building that they did renovate. And, so I can understand his, I'll say, agita of just changing.
I wonder if we could give it another year. And see.
See what?
Well, I see how our expenses go, see how our revenues go, see everything.
I mean, I'll add that
I mean,
I agree.
for example, right, like this time last year, we thought we were taking out 1.2 million from savings. We won't know until September, August, when the audit comes in, if it really was 1.2 or if it was $700,000, as an example. So I think that's some of the C I'm talking about.
Okay, I see that as very different from trying to get the same price for a comparable product, a better price for a comparable
So,
product.
Again, I don't think value is always down to price.
And I don't think we're just talking price here. I think it's a great service. And there's some better, lines in the insurance.
Right.
Both have give and take, but I mean, for example, the new policy that we're looking at has a greater opportunity for cyber coverage and data compromise coverage than we currently have. So I think we're looking at some greater coverages in some areas.
And they were given the opportunity, apples to apples, to adjust, see what they could do.
And they did reduce their price somewhat,
They did,
but not as much as the other vendor.
correct.
I mean, I'm kind of aligned with the thinking that it seems like from what we're hearing, it's at least the same coverage or better.
Mhm. Correct.
And also, $70,000 cheaper. I do also agree that, not being one of the patrons of a local business, moving a contract is, so this 17 is lesser, I guess, difference because of the property tax they pay, the contributions they make to, in the city. So, but it's still a higher contract, I guess. So like that's the conflicting part for me as well. Because I do like that this is a local business that we're supporting in a sense by choosing them. But I wish that number was smaller so we can say, okay, that local business can offset some of that, I guess. It's tough to put, I guess, the dollar amount of how much that is worth, I guess, to it, but yeah.
Have we asked if they can come down to 17?
What do you mean 17?
17,000, that,
They have come down.
They
some.
have capped,
Choose
it seems like they have
the
come down
17,000.
23,000, right?
No, so the numbers in here are for the new company.
Mhm.
You would add 17 back if we stay with Black Filter.
right, but if we talked to them, there's no way they would bring it down any
That's-
farther.
That's the furthest they said.
Yeah, I mean, you can talk to them again, but I mean, how,
And you asked and they're aware.
yeah, we had a meeting about it.
I mean,
They're fully aware of what we're
you
experiencing,
know what kind of economy we're in.
right?
The truth of the matter is that the city of Newcastle is a big contract for this small company. Right? And optically, if the city of Newcastle, where they're located and domiciled, chooses to not insure with them for whatever reason, that could obviously cost them potential business. And then think about what's in that space if they're not there.
I don't know what percentage of their business the city of Newcastle.
I don't know,
represents.
but they're a business just.
Again, that's why I said
They
value,
have
not dollars, not dollars and
Totally.
cents. So my questions, all I really want to know is what's the threshold and policy for contract decisions? Some come to council for council decision. Why do those come and others don't? Is there a dollar threshold or whatever? I just want to know that question.
So I guess to your point is like City Solicitor Alliance going from 80 to 125. It is what you're alluding
That's not a
to.
contract change. That's a practicality of, we already know everyone in the.
But it's a result of a contract. I mean, use multiplied by the amount in the contract.
Yeah.
But we're using them
We're
more.
using.
We're,
That's the reason.
we're spending more hours
Mhm.
of their time and
Yeah.
therefore the price has gone up.
Right.
The cost has gone up. I think their hourly rate went up a bit. Is that
Yes,
right?
slightly.
But mostly it's because every time one of us emails them or calls them or asks them a question, we are billed for their time. And so we're doing that more than we used to, so their fees are going up.
Is that also an annual contract or is that? I know this was
No.
the same company we did business for a lot of years at this point, right?
You've heard about
City
it.
Solicitor, yeah.
Yes, I think it's been 23.
That
I don't
sounds
recall
about
Twenty-two,
right.
23.
Yeah, with
Yeah.
Mr. Blasco.
Yeah, when he retired, then we actually went out and put out a bid and we
Oh,
had
okay.
3 companies
Right.
of that.
They came in, we
They made
interviewed them,
Yeah, and they made a presentation and it was,
and the firm we selected was a broader firm with greater depth of available expertise, as well as a lower hourly rate than the others were offering.
So that did come to council, it seems.
Yes,
Okay.
yes, they were selected by council. Now, I don't think that's a set term on that contract, that's just to be terminated by, either party can
Yeah.
terminate with due notice and so forth, whatever specified in the contract.
but there are only so many firms that deal with municipal things. So you can't go out to Acme and borrow
No.
because they don't deal with municipality things in the law like that and there's very few, and I don't know, that was mentioned during that meeting that there's
Oh, they
very
are
few firms,
extremely reputable.
yeah, but there are still very few firms that that do that kind of work,
Right, and we interviewed 3 of them, as you.
which might have been the 3 that do that kind of work.
In Newcastle County.
I
And you do
remember,
need
maybe
someone
Jeff was-
local for that because they need to know local law. And
You can't go to PA, New Jersey or Maryland.
Quickly, out of the 3 that bid, the one we selected had by far the most experience as city solicitors. And the other 2, had minimal experience in the role,
Mhm.
as I recall.
and my memory is that at least one of the other 2 was like twice the hourly rate.
That's right.
And probably above
Yeah.
them.
I mean, back to insurance, I believe I was the one who asked last year about looking into this contract because of the
Yeah.
increase that happened from year to year, and I just, thought it was significant for us not to ignore it, I guess. So, and I can't, like, I also, if I'm recommending cuts to our own staff, then I have to go against the same kind of logic here. That if we're looking to save $1,000 in professional development or car purchase or something, then 70,000 here, in that kind of logic, to me, adds up to that efficiency that we would create. I agree with Councilperson Mataway that this is not a, you would ideally want to continue the agreement with the local company, but it's just something you can't ignore.
No. And then,
as well.
I had conversations with them and, the prospective company, and this is not a thoughtless decision. I mean, we had many meetings with both of them, worked through, what our needs were, and, we're not gonna take this decision lightly, but if we can save a significant amount of money, then I see it as an opportunity to move to another company.
So let's say they could meet the same price.
Yeah.
You're saying the coverage is different. Could they match the same coverage?
Eventually, I don't,
We asked the question.
I mean, they each knew what the other did, so.
There were apples to apples on the
Yeah, the
comparison.
coverage.
I'm guessing you provided a minimum that you want for each of these categories and they drafted the offer, is that correct?
They each knew the needs,
Mhm.
and everything.
And this is a contract that renews annually.
Correct.
So it's something that can be, we can go out and check next year.
Yeah.
To see what price both companies can offer us.
Yeah, exactly.
I think I asked this before. Is it up at the end of the fiscal year?
Yes,
That's what I
so
thought
I
you
need to
said.
know now.
Right.
Like, I can't wait till June 30th to tell either. It needs to be-
I mean, we tasked the council and Antonina and them to go out and find where we can reduce expenses. This is a significant one. Do we like that we be taking it, out of town, I guess? I'm not really sure if it's out of town. But
I don't know that we would call it out of town. I mean, it's, like I said, it's part of an insurance trust for all Delaware municipalities. I think it's unique in that it focuses on municipalities in Delaware. It knows a lot of our situations. We have quarterly meetings as a trust. To, talk through our insurance issues, talk through claims, how to bring claim numbers down, their safety meetings, things like that.
And does the other company offer that kind of,
No, because it's not a trust.
So I agree, we are all tasked with that, but at the same time, what is true, I believe this is a direct result of us not raising taxes for 16 years.
Sure.
I mean, insurance companies, all other vendors raise their taxes, so because we have not raised our taxes, we're taking on additional revenue for the last 16 years. We're now taking business away from a company that's in a national historic building in our city.
Are you suggesting that if we can afford it, we should pay more for a
No,
similar product? Then I don't understand.
I'll put it out there, that, I mean, it isn't just 17,000. The business that we're talking about contributes heavily
Oh,
to
they do.
events and.
That's what I'm saying, this
and
is what happened.
volunteer organization.
Don't go
So
down.
again, I'm not, advocating that we pay more, but to take the whole picture into account, you know what I mean? I don't know if the new vendor is gonna support the city events and the city, people like that. So I don't think it's a easy, it's just 17,000.
They dine in, in our restaurants too, like on daily, I'm sure, so that there's that difference too of direct support. So, yeah, I mean, it's tough, that's why I said it's tough to kind of reduce
It
this
is.
number to a more accurate, I guess, the number when you add that value back in. For sure.
I am confused about the number that you said that, I think, maybe I misunderstood, that the total reduction for all insurance is 39,881,
Yes.
but so.
The spread of how we put it in here is different, just because the previous numbers, we just kind of had to break out manually, whereas they're broken up a little differently on the new proposal.
And so, am I correct in saying that if we stayed with our current vendor, this 39,881 would be reduced to 22,881 if you knock the 17,000, the 17,000 back in. But it would still go down somewhat.
Which number are you seeing, go down, the total number?
She said the total for all the insurances was going down 39,881.
So is that the 327 budgeted number on the bottom? Sorry, that's the recurring number. So 217,901, is that the number that would go up by 17? So we're looking, so the contract is
It'll go up
218.
by the 22. It's reduced by 17.
Wait,
Right?
no, the other way around. I think it's already reduced by 23. So
Already reduced by.
it would go up by 17. So it's either 217
Or
or
230.
234,000 that we're talking about. It seems roughly.
What's the
Hmm?
Why did that number go up so much this past year?
We talked
That
about
was the
purple.
reason why I asked for that, yeah.
I'm talking about the control total under insurance.
Because remember, we budgeted way higher than we actually needed for workers' comp because we negotiated some contracts.
Okay.
So we didn't know, so we already reduced this line a bunch.
I got you.
Last year was when we made that large workers' comp increase.
So we have savings essentially returned forward from this line item.
Yeah, just.
So, yeah, the way this started was this 150,000 on the workers' comp, it was doubled, but we really didn't spend that. So like that was the reason why we started this process of the review, yeah. But that line item itself is actually less than last year, so that's I'm looking at it's 0.2% of our budget for 17,000 in case we're curious. In that amount, so.
I think if this is obviously we don't do this, but if this were to go to the popular vote, I think the people would support us using a local vendor. I do.
Yeah, I'm really torn and I'm
I mean, we've cut a ton out of the budget. We've cut salaries out of the budget. We have to be practical somewhere. We really do. I mean, we've made so many cuts. I understand the local support. I'm all for it. But it doesn't make sense.
I can't say if it went to a popular vote, people would vote to keep it. I think people would be practical going, hey, it's a savings of, you know, here's where we are. You know, sorry, maybe next year you'll be able to, you know, we don't know what next year will be.
Like I said, I think this is a direct result of.
It may be,
cities raising taxes for 16
but
years.
you're dealing with.
The entire budget situation we're dealing with is a result of not raising taxes for 16.
Right, and so,
There's no argument in that. Which is why we need to raise taxes this year.
I'm all for that and other things.
If you don't want me to move it, I won't move it. But just know we're adding back to the budget.
Is this something, a decision we need to make today?
Is it contractually today or just like a
I need to let
courtesy
them
that you found
know,
out?
no, I need to let both of them know so we can prepare for our expiration.
Again, I think the value reduces the $17,000 figure. And we over allocated the number for this control figure last year.
Can you hit
Yes,
upon
but
the
that's a separate
advantages of the new companies that are coverage? I
The
mean,
better coverage for cyber and data compromise.
is that coverage is not available with the other company?
We have-
Or just so much
we have it.
longer?
We have it with the current company, but it's a much larger threshold, and then there are also umbrella policies for each line with the new policy that go above and beyond the general coverage.
So the cyber is higher coverage for the cyber attack, is that?
Yeah, God forbid.
yeah,
We do not want.
and separate coverage for data loss, is that correct?
And
Separate coverage for data loss. The data loss is a separate payout as beyond just the cyber.
And that's currently bolted into one.
We heard people from Kent County speak at the League of Local Governments last year because they were the victim of ransomware attack and it cost them, I don't remember how much they said, to recover their data. They had to shut down their entire system for several weeks. And this type of coverage would help bear the cost of that if it should happen to us. Is that correct?
yeah, that.
Is this only Delaware Trust? You said it was a trust, so
Mhm.
the municipalities are the ones, kind of like a health fund that is floating around there.
Yep, so it's the Toledo Founders Insurance Trust. Most Delaware municipalities are in the trust. I think it's 6 million.
And I like them. I think the lady came to the Delaware League of Local Governments. It's not an indictment on them as a reputable company.
I don't think we heard from anybody from this company. We heard from an employee of Kent.
No,
An official.
the company has lobbyists who go to Delaware League meetings and attend them. She gave me her business card.
Oh, okay, but she didn't make a presentation.
No.
Okay. So this trust is in some ways sort of like DMEC for the local
Yeah.
utilities.
Correct.
In that they pool their risk and that helps them save money.
Yeah.
Helps all of the members save money.
Mhm.
So it is I mean, it's not Newcastle local, but it's not like it's a giant national corporation or something.
And this is again, local business, paying taxes, paying fees, potentially gonna pay this extra additional type of tax that we're doing on different types of parcels.
If it passes.
I think we can give it another year. At least I would like to see that happen.
Do we need to take a vote on this?
It's not explicitly on the agenda, but
It's part of the budget.
yeah, it's part of the budget. You can take a vote.
So is there a motion? Okay, yes, Mr. Mataway has made an implied motion to retain our insurance coverage with our current vendor. Is there a second for that?
Second,
Okay. All in favor of retaining the coverage with the current insurance vendor, say aye. please.
aye.
So I think I heard three. Is that right?
Yeah.
So I guess that means we stay with the current vendor.
Okay. The other change I made to the budget was for the playground, for the resurfacing. I finally got the quote.
Page number, please.
I don't know. Under public, it was at parks. Playground maintenance, wood carpet, playground please shine. Playground maintenance, wood carpet, parks,
We're going forward here.
yeah.
That was action nine, right?
It's 8 on our sheet.
Okay, thank you.
Say that
So-
Again, what was it? Playground maintenance?
So the last item on page 8, the playground maintenance, wood carpet parks.
Yes. So the quote was for $22,875. We had already put 2,000 in there for just the striping, so we only added 20,875.
This is for basketball courts?
That's for the basketball
So-
court.
So
now.
this now includes the basketball court.
Yes,
That's a
and
plus.
that's a plus, and that's to remove the current surface, add a new surface and line it. With
For basketball?
for basketball.
It was just done, wasn't it?
Dobbinville.
Oh,
Yeah.
Not the one who
oh,
had a car.
Oh, okay, well, that makes sense, okay, because I was like,
So it added about 21,000 because we already had 2 that was put in there for initially.
And then the last item is for capital reserves.
That will be on the public service, right? On the-
No, just page. For the capital reserve.
They're under the budget then. It's not on the public service.
It's page 19, capital reserves building. So for that
We
line,
don't- Okay, so it's 17, last line.
we were carrying over an amount for the police department HVAC. We're still carrying over part of that line, but we needed to use some more of it this year. So we're continuing to fill that line to the same amount. We're just not carrying over the same amount. So
So reduced.
the carryover line was reduced by 8,000.
Which was spent, is gonna be shown
Then
as
we
expense
spent it
currently.
there, yeah. There are some repairs that are needed due to a crime. So those are all the changes that I made so far. I will add back the insurance numbers. And I didn't do it, I only got information this morning. But I wanted to add some more to that same line for capital expenses for buildings for the for the administration building. We're working on, as you know, some items to get the building repaired and to bring it up to security. And we had some additional needs that we've foreseen come out of this project. I can't say too much because it is a security matter. But the cost is gonna be a little more, so I wanna add about 75,000. In addition, that's okay.
Why would there be other? The one we just.
Same one.
I just wanna know if that's okay, because if it's not, gonna. Why?
So when you say about 75, is that something we're gonna have to get? Like I said, interest, like a rendering or something like a. You're gonna.
We've already done that.
Okay.
And the equipment that we're gonna need is just expensive that we had originally envisioned. And we want to just make sure we're doing the project to its full completeness. So we do it all. I did also Remember, I did apply for a bond bill for this project, but I think it's still gonna be at least 75 more than that.
And in regards to this, in terms of this particular increase to improvement,
Mhm.
regards to shelf life or return on the investment,
Mhm.
think that is 5 years, 10 years?
Oh, yeah, I think that
Okay.
these improvements will last us a while
Okay,
and, you know,
thank you.
I only have one
Very
question
well.
about this is, can this be expended this year by any chance?
Yeah.
Like 75,000?
no.
Yeah, that
no,
was a-
because I need to, there's multiple moving parts and I need to get them all done
Understand.
at once and I wanna wait to see if we get the bond bill for this.
Okay, so it's intentional. It could be, but we're trying to
Yeah.
overall save money by hopefully getting that.
I don't wanna, I can't sign, if I don't have all the money, I can't sign all the contracts.
I wonder, so you're saying for this 75, we might not need it because we might get it through bond?
I think so.
I
I think
think,
in addition
Oh,
to,
this is, I was about to
Above it.
propose to put it on reserve 75 if we're passing a tax that we may get offsetting revenue, but if it's in addition to
I
that,
think it's
gotcha.
actually,
in addition to the bond bill,
Correct.
assuming you get the bond bill. And if you don't get the bond bill money, then we're gonna have to figure out how to proceed.
and I'll still continue to pursue, other grant opportunities once they're available. And I had pursued a grant opportunity, this past year, but they were having administrative issues with, issuing these grants, so I wound up reallocating my grant application for, security, barriers for our events, and we were able to get funding for that, which is great.
I know this is tricky right now to ask questions because this is a executive session and stuff, I presume.
Mhm.
So I'll try to see if I can be careful. Yeah, it's tricky that that's not the total, that's just a part of the number. And it's hard to make a decision right now. I know you're asking us, but it's hard to make a decision without knowing why that went up by 75, like without knowing. Because we were just talking about insurance.
I didn't
So,
have,
like,
I didn't have, solidified numbers and I'm,
It was just an
working on
estimate at
getting-
the time of
Mhm.
bill submission.
Do we need to take a straw poll or are we?
My vote would be to not add it into, I'm okay adding the budget. I would prefer adding an unreserved 75,000 just because of the circumstance we're in as a city. But I'm okay with being either way, I guess. I know that's not a popular approach. But yeah, I mean, I'm happy to,
Well, we can only
Vote
add
on
it from unreserved because the reserved funds are already committed to other projects.
oh no, I mean like,
don't put it as part of.
not tax it. Or like don't increase the taxable 4.5 million or whatever it is currently, but rather like keep that amount, whatever these other things offset, but not add to that amount.
Don't understand.
Use that out of reserves, out of the,
Oh, I see what you're saying. Take it out of reserve.
yes. In that line as the revenue source being unreserved funds, but I know it's not a popular approach, I guess, but I'm recognizing as well.
You're trying not to touch the reserves.
That's what we've been saying all along.
Yeah, so now you're gonna start touching the
No,
reserves.
but I've been saying this in a couple of meetings now that
Yeah.
I'm having a hard time taxing 100% of the gap in a year where we have so many things coming down to residents in the city. So I've been saying that we should put several items onto the unreserved, just because historically we don't always expend the budgeted amount. We spend a little less. So like I think I said last meeting about $400,000 was my proposal to be put in unreserved or paid out of reserves, I guess, because of if we look historically, we don't always spend. We don't typically spend the amount that we budget, but now number one proposal is to tax that whole amount.
But if we reduce the amount we were to take from tax revenue by $400,000, realistically, how much difference would that make to individual taxpayers?
I did not speculate because it wasn't a popular
Probably
proposal.
not a
but-
whole lot, once it's spread out amongst everybody in the community.
I don't know, I can't tell. It was more that it would be a surplus next year in revenue. Whereas, you know, given the trends, it would show as a surplus because we didn't spend it, so it was more like,
But it
what
would
do
be
we
kind of
use?
a faux revenue next year because you used it out of the reserves instead of putting it into the budget.
Say that again?
Well, it wouldn't be a real reserve, a real revenue,
Mhm.
because you took it from reserves. And so now you have X revenue X revenue out of the budget, but it wouldn't have been there if you put the money in the budget in the first place.
No, I understand, so that's why I'm saying, like, if we
You know,
make,
it's kind
if we
of
make, if we do an entire 100% tax, then we're creating virtually more than less surplus. But knowing that we wouldn't most likely spend it, it's tough, I guess it's a conceptual thing that I've been looking historically budgets and seeing that we budget for 6 million, but spend 5.7, let's say, or whatever. So that's the part that I've been thinking about a lot. And in a year where we have just the rollback rate itself is a 35% increase.
What you put in the bond bill plus the 75,000, what would be the likelihood that it wouldn't cost what the bond bill was for and the 75? What would be that likelihood?
Pretty.
Look, it'll be higher.
I mean, you know, these things, when you get into building work, you always uncover one thing and you go to fix one thing and then you find something behind it. So it's unlikely that it's gonna cost less to do what that building needs.
Yeah.
And it may
Unless I
very well-
miraculously get these grants that have been so
Right.
difficult to get, I don't know.
So,
I'll say what I think everyone at the table has said previously. We appreciate the work that you've done on grants. We know that you've been looking under rocks, you know, looking in trash cans, you know, for grants. I think, let me ask this question to the extent you know, or to anyone. Work to the admin building,
Mhm.
significant work.
Yeah.
Do we have any idea when's the last time that's been done?
not since I lived
It's been
here.
piecemeal.
Okay,
It's
I've
been
only been-
piecemeal, but what I'm asking for is not even all that I would
Okay.
like to get done.
no, I just asked that because I didn't know, but I thought I knew the answer. But I did want it in the public domain.
It goes back to, we haven't raised taxes in 16 years.
Right.
And the reason we didn't was because we had prior administrations, prior councils who prided themselves on not raising taxes, even if that meant skimping on building maintenance. And now,
Yeah.
you know, as we know from our home, if there's a small leak in your roof and you don't fix it, it gets worse and it costs more money.
Yeah.
So the same thing is true for all kinds of building maintenance.
That's true. Yeah, but it wasn't just taxes, it was also other sources of revenue that we didn't look at either. But, I think the improvements are needed, seems like.
Yeah.
And they're long overdue.
So,
I would
not be a
I would be in
pessimist,
support of it.
what happens if we don't get the bond? And you still need these?
I'll come back here and ask you for a budget revision.
Well, essentially, I mean,
I can't say a lot of things I'd like to say here because
yeah,
they're security matters. But there are things that I need to address today.
How much is the bond that we've requested?
I think 150.
150.
Yeah.
all these conversations are circular, and it seems like from what Ms. Tintilla was saying, this is tantamount to a capital improvement. Potentially, right? We're potentially talking about capital improvement fund, right? That we want to set up and we believe in. It seems like,
Or I can ask you if you'd like, if I could take 75 from the couple.
yeah, what I'm saying is that these conversations are circular.
Yep.
And they're interconnected, like they all are.
So if there's that much less, yes, we usually budget more than we wind up spending. And if that over budgeting includes the 75 and we don't spend all of it, then that leaves more in reserves to go towards future capital improvements, which
Yeah,
we
right,
definitely are going to have.
Yeah.
So going to need. So to me, it's sort of 6 of one and half a dozen of the other, and as we've discussed before, next year, there are going to be other tax increases on our residents as well. The school tax is gonna go up again, the county tax will probably go up again. So we could try to save them this year, but then if we needed more next year, we'd be piling on next.
No, it's, I understand that my attempt is to reduce the 92% increase this year. So, that's my goal.
90% of what?
Property tax, average property tax for a resident in Newcastle.
But at what tax rate are you computing that
What
90?
we're seeing today,
The rollback.
The rollback rate?
the
or-
proposed rate versus current one.
Yes,
So that's my intent. I know there's more piling up in future, but it's what is in front of us right now that I'm trying to.
I agree that I don't overburden taxpayers of our city, and I want to expand our tax pool.
Unfortunately, as it's been said here, this goes back for 16 years of not raising taxes. And it's 16 years of things that should have been done, not getting done. You know, I sat on those councils and I didn't vote for a tax increase.
I understand.
So it's, but some of that too was really not exactly being communicated, some of the things we really needed. Kind of being downplayed. So, but
I think you bring up a good point. For years, it was downplayed, and we have our city administrator sitting here telling us she needs to do this. And I trust the city administrator, and I trust what she's saying, and I do think that we need to, accommodate her. If we do not get the bond bill, I think she comes back and we have to make hard decisions on maybe there's something else we cut or we wait to fund until next year. But I mean, I will say that the reason we're in this position is because we did have someone saying everything's fine, everything's fine, everything's fine. And the government shrunk, the services shrunk, we didn't have the security measures in place. Thank God that, something like happened in Kent County didn't happen here. But I'll give her the benefit of the doubt. I mean, certainly if we have to have an executive committee meeting about it, that's, but I will give her the benefit of the doubt
Oh.
that this is money that's needed.
I cannot agree more. My proposal is only to right now put it under the unreserved line, because my proposal would be if we adopt the capital infrastructure fund for it to be just part of that line, which is being funded out of unreserved funds this year anyways.
So if we
You know,
take the
so-
75 out of the unreserved funds this year, then they're not available to go into the capital reserve fund for future capital reserves, but it's capital expenditures. Or but it's the same thing in the long run.
Yeah, it's that picture of 92 that I'm referring to, trying to just lower the amount we tax for this year.
the
And that's kind of the.
point
the biggest one.
0.00149, because that number goes out, is like you said, how much is that really going to do? And we all are paying that. So,
No, I understand. I
and,
agree.
but you've hired the city administrator to go through this, and she's making the recommendations that is strongly backed. If some things she can state and some things she can't because of security reasons and stuff. And it seems like just sitting here at some point, we're kind of just second guessing, like, did you do X? Did you do Y?
That's
Well,
not, that's, no, I said I'm supportive, sorry.
yeah, but I mean, I think
I
we should
support this
look at
expense.
what she's done, because I don't think she took shortcuts. Even going back to the insurance, I think she really probably tried to get our current insured to meet the thing, and they couldn't. And, she knows how to do apples for apples, and she didn't do apples to oranges or tangerines or anything else. It's
I
Yeah.
totally agree this expense is needed. I don't know if that's not coming,
but
across. I'm just saying this, the only disagreement here is the which fund to fund it out. That's the only thing. And I'm happy to put this to vote and be the only one voting for that's reserved, but if we're putting a vote to fund this, I'm saying yes. I don't know
Well,
who's-
some of it though is
That's the
making a
difference.
decision on the budget first and the tax rate first. And the budget stabilization and the CIP, which, everybody is supporting, can really be moved to a discussion in July.
Yes.
And if you reallocate in July, that's great, but your budget now, what it is now, and what the tax rate is to clear that budget should just be the first concern. Budget stabilization, CIP, July, okay, now we can, because you can revise your budget.
It's still, my point is still it being unreserved, like use reserves funds for it. So it's not something we tax. My job is also to make sure that impact on people's lives is as much reduced. That's kind of how I see it right now. So that's what I'm trying to do.
I get it.
That's my,
But seventy-five thousand isn't going to greatly reduce anyone's taxes.
I'm talking about more than that, but this is just one instance that would add to that amount. Yeah. So all those things would add up that, in prior meetings, I said this would be the line I would propose to put in because it was one of those things where we're over budgeting for the hack engineer by, I don't know, 40,000 or flood resiliency. And I was saying, these are things that we may or may not spend, but we're raising the tax over for because we are budgeting for that increased amount. And I think this should be put on that reserve line because there's a chance we don't spend that.
Right,
If
but
we-
then
so
there's
that's
that
what
chance.
I
You reduce the
understand that.
Taxes next year if you. find
I
that-
understand, but it's still an attempt to say this 1.6, 1.7 gap that we're trying to raise the tax for would be reduced to 1.2, let's say 1.3. That's my proposal or vision of it. So I don't know what that, I did not do the, calculation of what would that impact folks, but that's just the larger picture of my attempt, but that's not here or there, I guess. That's up for debate. So
All right, so
safe to say, Antonina, that you have $75,000 to add to this line. I think.
thank you. So I just want to go over a couple of things. I'm not gonna go over the proposed new tax rate and the total budget amount.
Can I just ask revenue?
Mhm.
Question on page 35, last line for Verizon and cable. Is there a reason we cannot increase that to 110? I'm just seeing the actual numbers, 112 and then 119 this year. It seems like it's going up every year.
On the cord.
Sorry.
Say that again.
Is this on the revenue?
No, it's going up. Yeah, it's a, yeah.
At a prior meeting, we voted to reduce the projection because we think the cable fees are going to go down.
Franchise. It's headed for franchise. Franchise 125, it's headed for.
Oh.
Yeah, the Verizon line, last line of 35, but I don't know. Yes, I don't know what pages for you, it might be. CCATP, Verizon, I'm saying,
You
can we
wanna-
put that at 110? Because that one seems to be rising and we reduced franchise to match the actual one from this year, which is 76, so we budgeted at 80, which was previously 125 and 5 years straight. That's just one thing I noticed there, but, it can stay at 100, I'm just
So who's
asking.
responsible for
Council.
allocate?
Or to raise the
No, not
estimate to
reallocate, I'm
110.
just saying, using actual numbers from the last 2 years,
Mhm.
Yeah.
just to base the new number off of that. But it's not a huge amount to go up or
Because
down.
it's not reduced as much as the other franchise.
Say that again,
Because it wasn't reduced as much as the other franchise fees.
no, increased.
It's been steadily increasing while the other one's been going
Yeah,
down.
it's been, in actual, I'm gonna read last 5 years, 82,000, 84, 97, 112, 119. So I'm just saying we can probably move 100 to 110, that's all I'm saying.
Yeah, I'm
But
fine with
that's,
That
that's,
seems
that's,
reasonable.
that's what
Yeah,
I'm saying.
yeah.
Based on the last 2 years, it seems reasonable.
And franchise went from 130 to 76, that's kind of
Mhm.
I guess that's where the
Yeah,
cutting
yeah.
the cord is.
yeah, it's offsetting itself, but yeah, that's
Right.
just a question I had. I don't know.
That's fine with me.
Okay.
Okay, I do want to, bring to your attention a couple of revisions from the county. I briefly mentioned it at the last meeting. There are some properties, that the county exempts in part, not in entirety. So when they sent us, the numbers, for taxable values, they exempted them entirely. So we went back to them and asked them to rework those numbers and give us the new partial exemption amount, and that taxable amount. So that added $12,188,100 back into our total assessable value, which is great. So that reduced, or adjusted our rollback rate to 0.23 instead of 0.24. So,
That in this presentation?
yeah, slide 9.
Right, so this is 3 parcels right there that are listed on one of the slides.
Correct.
Is that, what you communicated with county, was it just these 3 parcels you identified, or was it, hey, take a look at the whole thing, can you give us?
They
Any
look like
other-
the entire partial exemption risk.
I'll have to look into it.
995 over here and told us those 3 parcels.
So, okay, so it wasn't just here's 3, can you double
No.
check yours, they didn't,
It was
okay,
they assessed all of their partial exemptions. I guess this was an issue across the board. And so they told us all 3 that would affect our city. And we added that amount back into our accessible value.
just for the council, the top one, 12 million one is the building where Amazon is in. You're wondering what that parcel
So,
is. Page 9, but there's no, oh yeah, page 9. Couple pages.
so, okay, that's the,
Three
add that,
parcels.
right.
Mhm.
And,
So that reduced the rollback rate to 0.24, blah, 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 0.4.
0.23. So if you go
Yeah,
to the last square. The adjusted,
oh, accounting for edits, got it.
it's a lot of information. But that's, good for us and for our residents that we added so much more back into the accessible value.
To the base, yeah.
Correct.
And that reduced,
it went from 0.24 to 0.37, sorry, 0.237, so I mean. Like reduced it,
but then the new rate is, well, it was 0.36 before, so it's still 0.367815
The new rate
is
is
0.37.
0.3.
oh, no, this line here, sorry, this, I think we're talking about rollback rate on the higher page. It went from this
0.24 to
to
0.23,
0.237.
right? But then the new,
These are different
Actual
totals, the
rate.
total revenue here is 4.75.
Right.
This is 4.593, so the rate is depending on the total that we're.
well, sure,
And it's gonna change, so honestly, just, it'll be different.
Yeah.
because you have the adjustments based on our conversation tonight.
Yeah.
I do have a question, so we're on a page 10, we have
Mhm.
recommendation 1, 2, 3, and 4, and I'm seeing different totals for all of them, tax revenue.
Correct.
Why, if we have just one budget number, or is these like historical, like this was different meeting that occurred
Different
on different
meeting,
dates? Okay.
all of the budget recommendations from the past one
Which-
meeting.
Because
So
Revise the
Is
budget.
number 4 the current one then?
Yeah.
yeah, we're on,
Okay,
we're
We're on
on
number
revision
4.
number
Yeah, yeah.
4, and so this matches the number 4 here.
This is like a summary page.
And I was like looking where the percentages are at that point, like, is this 90%, this 95, but I did not remember us doing that, but then I noted like, anyways,
So you can see we started at
475,
right,
moved to 483, cut some stuff to 459, and now, well, we don't know what it is, but as of today, 455.
and it'll go up a little bit.
So we're probably looking at 475 again if we're adding 75 and back in the number or 6 something, I guess. There were some savings there too, they
Right.
mentioned.
No.
Say that again, Megan?
Yeah, I did, I was.
The
asking about-
75 is not in this
We have
number,
to add that back in, we have to add.
and the 17 we have to add. So that's 85, 92,
Is the savings that we just talked about already in here?
and you've added 10 in revenue,
Right,
so that
The
reduces.
savings that you mentioned, that was spent now, 8,000,
Yeah, so where you'll see that,
the reduction 23,000, that's already in this new number, I
Mhm.
presume. The HVAC, 8,000,
yeah, and the, you'll see it on the carryover, the restricted fund balance carryover increase,
Mhm.
right? Because we're not carrying over the additional 8,000.
And we have another potential, I mean, it's still pending, but there are some serious problems with the trees on Sixth Street that are invading the plumbing or the sewer lines and the pipes, and in one case, the foundations of a home on Sixth Street, and the residents are asking for those trees to be removed. And the ballpark estimate is $3,500 to $4,000 per tree. So we're talking at least 16,000, probably close to $16,000 there. And potentially more if other trees, or even if we just have an arborist look at the other trees and see how many of them are likely to invade lines and foundations and see if there are other trees that need to be removed.
Right.
So somewhere in there, we're gonna have to come up with probably at least another $20,000.
So about 100,000 more. Can you tell me,
26.
Yes.
so just a question about the trees, does this happen frequently, like at any even couple of years, or is it like one of those?
It's
Really rare.
it's the first time I've been aware that it's come up to this degree with this many trees involved.
Mhm.
4 residents went to the tree advisory commission with petitions to remove these trees. They presented the bills for the money they had spent to repair things. One of them brought a chunk of tree root that had invaded, I don't know if it was their sewer pipe or its output pipe or their foundation, but it was like this wide, and it's a problem. Those trees were planted, I don't know, 40, 50 years ago, and people didn't think about them. They're beautiful. The tree canopy on West Sixth is lovely, but
Mhm.
I
they're
have 2 of them.
No, I was just asking in case we need to add like a line in the budget in general for every year, like we did for something else, or like a transit plan, like do we need something that's there as a contingency for this type of stuff, but it seems like. No,
this
because
seems
it's-
somewhat of an
one-off,
anomaly,
yeah.
because I don't think we have this type of tree on other streets.
Are these sycamores?
Yes.
Oh, I got 2 of them in front of my house. 2 huge ones. And I watched the roots go across the sidewalk, road through there.
Well, that's part of the problem. I mean, on Sixth Street, there are sidewalks that look like
Yes,
this
yeah.
because of the roots.
Well, I keep watching the basement to make sure nothing's impeding.
I presume we would have to fix the, sidewalk as well.
Well,
but
there's a
that's-
slight chance that the state may cover some of it because it's a state highway.
Oh,
But there's, as usual, there's just conflicting information in our code and the state code, because it, one place it makes the city responsible for the right of way, and that's where the trees
Mhm.
are. And another place it says state's responsible, so the tree advisory commission is reaching out to try to resolve that discrepancy. But I do think we have to be prepared that this is something that we're gonna have to deal with.
Yeah,
And it may prove to be more than just these initial 4 trees.
Right.
We don't
Yeah, this
know.
is probably something we have to look at in the long term, like
I,
past 20 years.
I agree, Council President. I think this is maybe something that we can maybe try to work with the tree commission, and the city administration office, et cetera, to possibly even build this into something like a capital improvement plan, so to speak. Or not necessarily plan, but like an addendum to over the next 3 to 5 years, we expect that these trees are gonna have to, be pruned, et cetera, because we all love trees, but the more trees we plant, it's gonna be an additional expense.
Well, these trees have been extensively pruned to keep them out of the wires. And to the extent that some of them are kind of misshapen and certainly don't have their natural shape. So we've done that part.
Okay.
But this is the underground part that's not so visible until the sidewalk starts pushing up and people's pipes clog and so on. And yes, there probably are other trees that are gonna need this in the future.
I mean, on Delaware Street there, right where
I mean-
Mr. Vic lives, is like, the sidewalk there is, popping up, I mean.
Currently, and I think for at least the past 5 or more years, the tree commission has selected varieties of trees that don't get too tall, that don't have extended root
right,
systems.
right.
But these trees were planted, I don't know, 40, 50 years ago.
Some even longer, yeah, and they just.
So it's there and we're gonna have to deal with it, is all I'm saying.
Thanks for bringing it up, yeah, it's.
And that's not included in this budget at all, right?
No, we added 10,000.
Oh, we did
Yeah,
that.
something earlier to tree commission, yeah, I was.
So that's
but,
maybe 2 or 3.
That's good. Was that what they presented in a report?
No, they didn't ask for it because they weren't aware of the issue at the time.
The petitions from the residents came after
So
that.
then it might not be in there.
No, I added it. We talked
Oh,
about it.
it's added outside of the
10,000
report.
is there.
I know they asked for something else.
So that was what I had. I did put the 75-25 in there on side 11. You want to look at that? And again, more to talk to.
This is exactly what I was saying, like about $400,000. Thanks for putting it together.
And I didn't do the 50/50 again since we pretty much decided that meeting.
Mhm.
We're not gonna discuss.
Too many numbers as it is.
So that's all I have for the budget. I wanna ask if there's any final changes you would like me to make. My intent for next week is to come back on the 25th, go over this one last time, give you the numbers, and then on the 26th, we can have the public hearing for the ordinance and hopefully approve that if you so choose.
My only question is about the property value, which is also part of the ordinance we're reading later today.
Mhm.
I asked you this already, but I'm just asking
Yeah.
for information for everybody here. So the numbers we're seeing right now, the total assessed value on these slides includes county exempt, county deductions of 173,000 for all the properties that are county exempt,
That are
based on their income and age, will the eligibility criteria.
Yes, because it'll give us a little bit of a better number, a more conservative number.
I understand, but basically, if we go with 32,000 or whatever
Yeah.
number we were talking about later today, that might offset this by some amount, I don't know what, but like, yeah,
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
So if you have any other last minute requests, please let me know by Monday. I want to give you final numbers on Wednesday for your public hearing on Thursday. If we can, were you saying something? Okay. Real quick regarding variable tax rates, just wanted to provide an update on the charter change request. Suzanne, President Souter and I went to Dover today. Yesterday, the charter change request passed the full house, which was great. So today it was in the Senate committee. I passed the Senate committee and will hopefully be on the Senate floor next Tuesday or Wednesday. So we don't know when the governor will sign it. We have to make a decision on the budget sometime soon. We can still talk about variable rates, but we don't have the approval right now. So I don't know if it's prudent to consider, moving forward with the variable rate, but we don't even have approval. I did include, I think it's slide 12, I can't remember on it, but, yeah, slide 12. I did include some variable rate examples for what other municipalities are currently doing. Ellesmere has, a really interesting approach to unequal tax rates. They charge a per unit cost and then a percentage. So if you have a building with 25 apartments, they charge per apartment unit and then a percentage for the entire building. If you have a house with 2 dwelling units, they charge for each dwelling unit and then a percentage for the entire building. So that's one approach. And then Wilmington and Odessa take similar approaches where they have residential tax rates and non-residential tax rates. So these are just some examples of options that we can look at once, and hopefully once this is approved as an option for us. And we can have more in-depth, thoughtful conversations about this as time goes on, but I just wanted to share this with you. And we talked about this a little bit back when the students gave their presentation. We talked about Odessa and they gave their tax rate and things like that, but I just wanted to bring it to your attention.
And Wilmington is one time, right? This is just
Wilmington has
governor
for this
or I
year.
guess current
I don't
mayor.
think it's been approved yet, but that's.
But it was proposed as a one time, right? We
Yeah.
revert back to one rate. And then Odessa, I know it says it's 21-22 fiscal
They've had
year.
the same rate,
Have they done this for a while, I guess? Like, is it like they're sticking to the two rates?
yeah, and Ellesmere's done the same for a really long time.
And so Wilmington, Odessa, we have 2 categories, either residential and non-residential. So we've discussed varying options as to how to parse it out based on zoning, based on land use categories in our comp plan. I think that's all gonna require an extensive conversation. And if it doesn't pass, it's not even gonna come before the Senate till next week.
Right.
So there is no way we're gonna be able to incorporate the variable rate into the fiscal 26
Yeah.
budget, because there's simply not time to work out how we're gonna do it. The good point of that is that once we get past this, we can have a thoughtful conversation. I was thinking perhaps give us all a break after all these meetings, maybe late July, early August. We have a special meeting where we only discuss the options for how, assuming it passes, for how we can break out the variable tax rate, how we would apply it here, at least to determine the categories. And then if we arrive at a conclusion. We can draft an ordinance, have legal review. In the fall, we can have first, second readings and perhaps pass it, and then it'll be in place for the fiscal 27 budget. But I think we have to do this thoughtfully, because if we try to rush it, we could mess up badly, we could harm residents by taxing them incorrectly. We could just
And these are just,
really make a
two
mess of
examples,
it if we try to do it too fast.
these are just some examples of how to do it. I mean,
Right.
there's other ways.
Right,
that we have
there are
to-
multiple ways to do it, and that's what makes the decision complicated.
Right.
And why we need to give it more thought and discussion than we have time to, we will have time to do. Even if it were to pass on Tuesday in the fall,
We still need the governor's signature.
we still need the governor's signature, and then we have to prepare, post it and give 15 days notice, and that gets us past July 1, and we need a budget before then.
The Ellesmere one,
Mhm.
do you have any idea where they came up with the 567.95 per?
No, and it changes every year.
Oh.
It keeps going up, right? We looked at like the past 6 years and it changed every
So their
year.
base is staying, the percentage is staying, but
Yeah,
the flat amount per unit is increasing.
yeah, I think it's probably based on whatever their tax needs are, like whatever their revenue needs are.
I understand the timeline, President. I said this last meeting when we talked about this like not potentially happening in time, most likely was I think the effort would have been done for this, fiscal year to reduce that impact on residents.
Well, sure, that was,
Like that was the
that
initial,
was
yeah.
the thought, but the practicality is.
I understand. I just wanted to say like that was the reason why we were willing to explore this as an
Right.
option.
But at least,
In a short period of time. And Joe, do you remember, not do you remember, do you have an update on what county's doing? I know there was some talk about them doing for this fiscal year.
Yeah,
different
that
things.
proposed and paid the variable rate.
So they are doing two
for
residential.
fiscal
non-residential.
26. And they just have two categories,
Yep.
residents and non-residents.
How did conversation go about that in
There
council?
was no conversation.
There was no.
None.
Passed.
I mean, it's a proposed budget. Obviously, you have budget meetings and everything and hearings and all, but there was really no discussion on the variable rate at all.
Has the county done the variable rate before?
Not that I know of.
Okay.
But they didn't have charters like municipalities have charters.
That's right, they,
They didn't need.
Yeah.
Is this a one time, or is it?
no, as far as I know.
There was no indication.
I mean, it's in this year's budget. They didn't say it was just for this year, so.
No, that's my biggest,
Yeah.
comment about this is that I'm bummed, and I guess, if you will, that it's not
Yeah.
happening this year, because that's the year that we
Well,
wanted it to. kind
sure,
of
sure.
before, back in, months ago, I guess, when we,
But to
I
do
was
it
talking about-
badly could be much worse than not doing it at all.
I agree, I agree.
So that's where we stand. The next one is the fiscal year 2025 tax recommendations, which we've already sort of talked about in conjunction with the budget and the numbers on slide 11, I think it was. Yes. No, slide 10. It has the first iteration, second, third, fourth, and then the new rates and so. So we sort of discussed that. We can't absolutely finalize it until we finalize the rest of the numbers, which will be next week.
Yeah, and we have our public hearing scheduled for June 26th, at 6:30, and then our regular meeting will be at 7. Of course, residents are welcome to attend, and, I didn't get to mention this last week at, the council meeting, but we did send out a letter with, the MSC bills on the crier last week. Just informing residents of the budget situation that we're in, the financial situation, and the prospect of the taxes possibly increasing and inviting them to continue to attend meetings. So we hope that, residents will understand and attend and make their voices heard if they have concerns.
Right, and certainly be hopefully not surprised when they get the tax bill
Right,
in July.
right.
Yeah, it's probably one of the better ways to try to reach out to everyone, because everyone gets an electric bill and everyone has the crier in it. We hear so much about, we didn't know, but other than going door to door and talking to people, there's a letter going to your house.
It's something that you,
It's something that you.
Hopefully.
I mean, I hope they,
But
you
you
know,
know, sometimes it becomes incumbent upon the resident too.
I mean, we try,
Yes,
but they, residents have responsibility
that's
too.
right. It becomes incumbent on them at a certain point. Yeah.
I do think, no, yeah, I mean, you can even knock on the door and people might not recall the conversation months later.
Right.
But I do
They
think-
answered the.
But I do think as we go into the conversation about variable rate, if it passes in the new year, we should do like I mentioned this before, Facebook ad, where we actually pay an ad to go in, not a post on our Facebook, because then my hope is that we have this, you know, public come to the meeting to voice their concern or opinion or whatever it is, right? Like with either wanting it to be variable rate or not, right? Because that's the kind of the debate, right? Like to see kind of how it impacts everybody. So I think if we can do that to get, and maybe even schedule it now in a senior center, you know, as we're discussing that particular item, it would be helpful to see, you know, people come and talk about how that would impact them and stuff. So just you know.
Well, when we get
desire, I
closer,
guess.
we can.
Yeah, I mean, I don't even think it needs to be happening in July, you know, it's, there's no rush if it's not happening for this fiscal year. It doesn't have to happen anytime soon. It can be more strategic in a timeline.
But ideally, I would like to see us make a decision by the end of the calendar year. So that it's fully in place when we start our budget discussions for fiscal 27, which probably need to be started earlier rather than later.
Well, yeah, if we have mid-year review budget, we would like to know
Well,
kind of
yeah.
at that point. you know,
Exactly.
Because as a council and. how
But
to
that
prepare.
still gives us time to do it thoughtfully. So. Okay, ordinance 553.
So you have it in your stapled together packet, but if you can look at the one that's just on your,
Yeah, I was gonna ask you if that one was different.
yeah, there were some other edits and,
Yes, so Councilperson Mataway and myself, last night on incorporating what we thought was the feedback we, you know, discussed over a couple of meetings. So that,
I'm sorry, but can I clarify?
sorry.
So this loose version is different from the one that's stapled to the agenda?
correct,
Okay, so just so I
just
can,
ignore the one that's stapled to the
okay,
front.
just so I know what I'm looking at is what. Okay,
so I think.
I'm sorry to interrupt.
That's, no, that's all right. It's better that we're on the same correct version than not.
Exactly.
So if you go to the second page, I can just highlight the changes and then we can talk, you know, as you talk about every change. The first change is in the section 222-2, talking about you know, balance to be maintained. We're stricken now the previous language about 50% to address the concern about it, you know, fluctuations of the market. So now it reads, you know, beginning in fiscal year 27, the total cumulative balance in the budget stabilization fund shall be no less than 50% of the city's operating budget for the prior fiscal year, as measured at the start of each fiscal year on July 1. Temporary fluctuations below this threshold during a fiscal year are permitted due to the timing of revenues expenditure, provided the required balance is restored by the beginning of the following fiscal year. So the first part there by July 1 was basically to say, as we review the budget, that's when we're hoping that balance would be maintained at that time. What happens after that is kind of outside our control to say it will be difficult to maintain that balance, you know, throughout a year. So I think that was the reason why we put July 1 in there. So that's kind of like as we adopt the budget each year and looking this going forward, that would be kind of time to address, you know, how is that fund looking? And then, you know, the following sentence is just like trying to explain why, I guess, you know, different fluctuations of investments and stuff. But yeah.
So just for clarity, would you look if we did not have the reserves to fund that at the 50% rate? Would you look to raise the tax rate for that?
No, just because it's structured, so like, I think the later part of funding, it comes from reserves. Like, I think this is, well, if we didn't have 6 months worth of revenue, then yeah, we would have to start talking about it, how do we get to that point? But I
Yeah.
wouldn't, I think the way that we talked about the fund is being funded out of the surplus revenue,
Mhm.
I would not, you know, say we should raise tax to fund that down, remain a balance, because the idea is to just,
Okay,
if there's a surplus to, you know.
but this section says shall be no less than 50%, which doesn't give us any flexibility. And I don't know if the later section. In other words, it seems like from what you just said, we're introducing conflict within the wording of the ordinance, that one place it says it must be 50%. And you're saying later it gives us more flexibility.
Well, it's because like how the language is structured going forward, like the withdrawals being 5%. So
Right.
that's, I don't know, let's say $400,000, but the idea is like, we would most likely raise tax for that, you know, like,
So you're saying we should raise I mean, not this year, obviously, but could raise taxes simply to fund this at 50%. Because
Yeah, yeah.
50% of our budget this year would be 3.5 million roughly, right?
Something like that, yeah.
So there's
45.
no way, we don't have 3.5 million in surplus. We have a few $100,000 in surplus. So where would the rest of that come from?
No,
No,
we
no,
actually do have, but we would have the ability to fund that. based
Oh, you're
upon-
saying based on our reserves that we already
Yeah,
have?
fine.
So basically, this
The
will
un-
ensure that there's a 6 month
the
operating
unrestricted
fund in our budget,
reserves.
which I think it's in all of our.
So you're taking
Already.
it from the reserves, okay.
Yeah, yeah, I mean, that's the part, we can talk about, part that funds it initially. So if you-
Sorry, maybe my turn for this too.
We can go to we can start there, I guess. So we can start second to last page, section 2 and section 3 to talk about initial deposit into these two funds. And we have put in as for budget stabilization, we have rounded up the number to 4 million. The initial deposit into budget stabilization fund pursuant to this ordinance of 4 million shall.
Okay, where are we? I'm sorry, we have
Second to last page,
two different funds
second to
here.
last page of the whole document.
But we're talking about the budget stabilization fund
Both.
and the
Well,
capital.
yes, I just wanted to give a context of it being already funded, as we're talking about, are we gonna raise tax? It's relevant to the question of raising taxes.
Okay,
So like section 2 is talking about initial deposit into budget stabilization fund, section 3 into the capital infrastructure fund. Both of, one being 4 million, one being 2 million, deposit initially this year. So like, as we withdraw out of the fund, so I think that's what we can start a conversation about, when we raise tax, what the amount that we withdraw.
And in addition to that, Council President, by having, for example, the 4 million in the budget stabilization fund, those monies will be retained in regards to the income generated in that given year. So that would reduce, right? We know that the budget's gonna increase. That would reduce the amount of also additional money that you have to pour into it on an ongoing basis.
so you're saying that the initial funding of these funds would come from our existing unrestricted reserves.
Like 8 million or whatever that we have currently,
Right, right.
that's.
And that includes
That's
the
including
ARPA
6
fund,
months right now.
right.
Yeah, that's the ARPA fund is reflected in the capital
that-
increase from 500 to include the ARPA portion in there so that we can, earmark that in there. For potential, but we added more than 1.2 million, so we can not just have a fund that doesn't fund any capital projects if we're just putting the ARPA amount that is only solely funding the flooding. Improvement, I guess. Or anticipated cost for that. So that's a preface to, we can go back now to the rest of the document changes, but I wanted to say, hopefully that it helps answer would we raise tax for it? Because we wouldn't really be expecting to, raise tax to fund it fully, because that's the proposal at hand.
So based on what you were just saying, how often do you expect to raise taxes to fund this?
I don't know. I really don't know. It's really all based on based on the council's decision of how much if there's a natural disaster, I don't think we raise a tax because there's a bill that we need to pay and we can't. I mean, there's certain exceptions that we need to have in place so that I can't answer that.
I guess my concern is we lock ourselves into doing things that are not, we lock future councils into either having to rescind this ordinance or,
Well, so I think it's what it's trying to do. So we can change, I'm gonna ask you to propose a change language for the shall be no less than 50%. But I guess my point is that it's just trying to make sure that we have 6 months worth of funds set aside. Right, so that's what it's trying to do, which we have already. We have more than that. So
Right.
I don't see this being in crisis. Hopefully, but I can see it being in crisis, I guess. But I guess it's just trying to be a safeguard in place that we think about if we're going below 6 months worth of, so let's say if our funds right now were less than 3.5 million, then this would make us think, okay, should we raise a tax to make sure that we have enough in our reserves to fund more than 6 months worth of operating funds, which we probably should. Like if we didn't have 8 point something million right now on reserve, and we only had 3.5 that we needed to pay 400, let's say, on reserve. I hope the discussion would be, let's raise tax for that.
Yeah, but if we had.
I guess that's the scenario, this is.
I
probably
mean, I'm thinking of what happened during COVID.
Mhm.
The economy tanked at least for a short term, and if it hadn't have been for the ARPA money and the other emergency funds that we got from the federal government, the city finances would have been in pretty bad shape. And residents were also suffering because unemployment skyrocketed and so forth. So in those circumstances, I don't think we want to raise taxes.
I agree.
And
That's
so
why I
if we
said I don't know
lock
if there's a
ourselves in,
disaster.
We could put other provisions.
yeah, I think it needs some emergency relief valve kind of thing that we're not locked into. We shall have 6 months, no matter what,
Mhm.
even if we've had some kind of disaster that has cost the city a lot of money and cost individual residents a lot of money. Are we gonna then on top of that raise their taxes to restore this fund?
That's a decision for the council at the time, probably the answer is no. But so
Okay, but
I would
then maybe
propose
the-
then changing language to say something more like that we're aiming to keep
Yeah,
50%. I don't know what that
down
language
to
is,
the
but.
goal should be.
Yeah, so the beginning, the total communal balance in the stabilization fund,
I don't think anybody disagrees with having 50%.
I'm saying, yeah, I'm saying, that's what I'm saying, let's change the wording to say of it being a goal or something, I don't know.
Yeah.
Total. If anybody can think on the fly right now, let us know proposed wording.
Vision, the total accumulated balance of the budget stabilization fund vision shall be, or is adding the word vision, does that help for the people that, that are locked in by the word shall? Do you want to strike that too?
I'm uncomfortable with the word shall based on previous legal advice that shall means it will be done as opposed to may,
Right,
which gives you more flexibility.
right.
Or,
But then you could obviously have a future council that say, hey, we're not, this is not precatory, we don't have to do it, we'll just hold freedom.
well,
You know.
shall,
How about this?
in my mind, shall does not give them that option.
So beginning in fiscal year 27, the goal of total cumulative balance in the budget stabilization fund shall be.
Right, if you put
And
the
then
word
continue.
goal.
Does that sound okay? Like
I mean, I would want to
guys
read it by
gotta-
Max or
Yeah,
Mike,
yeah,
but
sure.
yes, I agree, that
So
would
the
soften it.
goal,
So we're not locking
Did you hear that,
future
Antonina?
councils into that.
thank you. Thank you for thinking through that. And remove shall if there's advice from the lawyers, like whatever they think. Not goal. The attempt of this is to make sure that we're aspiring to have 6 months worth of
Right,
operating budget in this fund. That's the, anything else from here that is
Yeah.
up for change. And
There may be a
That's-
time where we have 5 months.
Yeah.
You know, or 4
Right,
months,
or
but
4
we try to, you know.
and there may be a time when we have 8 months, and
Yeah.
that's great, but I don't want to lock future councils into having to raise taxes in a tough time to meet this 50%, that's what I'm saying.
So we should put maybe a range?
So then
Well-
I would propose the last sentence after the comma. So on the same page that talks about provided the required balances are still by the beginning of the full fiscal year. I think we should change that as well, because that's the same language that so it should be more like,
Yeah.
wait, provided the required balance. So some soft language there too, that is looking more at an attempt to restore the balance, not actually doing it. So if you can work on that language, Antonina, that would be great.
Yeah.
Attempt to restore. Does that sound okay to the rest of people?
I think, councilperson.
No, yeah, I heard that. I wanted to just point that out there. It's the same kind of tone. Go ahead.
But I think by putting that in there, it's just, then you don't need to follow it.
I understand, but it's, if we have top one change, but not the bottom one.
Oh, no, I agree to change both, but by changing it, you're not gonna have to do it. It's there as
Understood.
a recommendation.
But that is what we're trying to say by not kind.
I understand, but the purpose of this is to put it in play, so you're giving the out.
I understand, but if the whole council votes anonymously or majority that they need a 3 million to put for a certain project, then that's the decision of the council. I mean, and this should not stop it, I guess. Because they can also vote to strike this ordinance out before they're doing so. So I mean, that it's pointless, I guess, to put Shell in there. Because the councils after us can do
Well,
that.
I guess I'm
Have a
thinking,
power to do
in
so.
an emergency, do you want them to have to go through 2 months of
Well, in
rescinding
an
this ordinance?
emergency, I believe all things are off.
But that's not what this says.
No, I'm saying in regards to if there's a state of emergency,
Yeah.
this
There's
done by
certain-
the county or state, a lot of stuff goes by the wayside. Is that right?
It says it in there.
What's in there,
Under 30, under 3, so that's nothing, it's, yeah,
But I mean holistic.
Maybe
under
it's-
3 there.
maybe
Under 3
it's
is the next
very-
page.
Yeah.
You go,
Funds shall not exceed one.
it's basically allowing 100 all of it to be spent for national emergency.
So may be expended, funds expended shall not exceed 5% of the city's operating budget, only upon approval, and then we're done.
Which is great, but what happens the year after when now we've pulled it all out, and we might not be able to afford to get to that 50% because we just.
But
we
that's
pulled
why I'm
it.
asking if we need to include language in here about raising taxes to fund this. Because it is part of our budgeting system. We should include language.
I wonder, like, if you take out a certain amount, say from the fund,
Mhm.
if we should require council to evaluate it.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? Just to put eyes and ears on
Right.
the
If
tax
the
rate.
fund falls
and-
below
yeah.
25%, consideration for tax increases to replenish the fund should be considered.
Or revenue streams, right?
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, I think even higher percentage of that, unless it's natural emergency, of course, like if there's a disaster happening, it all being spent, that's what you need to spend it for, right? But like if we're just going in a year where we have a lower revenue side, right, what this is meant to kind of offset, right? Like when we have something that we projected, over projected, or something happened and didn't go to that, but it's not disaster, it's a pandemic. I wouldn't wait for this to go to like 2 months for the operating budget to say this is a disaster. I think even, going below 6 is a flag for me because I don't think this fund should be at a 6. It should be higher than that. Like right now, we have more than 6 months worth of funds in our reserves.
Mhm.
Which, so we're not in, like, hopefully we're not in a situation this goes below 6. But yeah, I'm open to a language that would talk about at certain cutoff.
How about a certain
We-
cutoff that triggers a budget?
But it should be anyways. It doesn't have to be codified. It's one of those things like we should know how much we have in our reserves. And if it's below 6 months, we should always have a flag. I don't know if that has to be codified necessarily, but I'm open to it, I guess. That to me is not tying hands.
Report in every meeting, every council meeting, you're given a report. And you know
Yeah.
what's in.
That's what I'm saying. So like, I think we would know on a monthly basis,
Yeah.
is there less than 6 months worth of
Yeah.
money in there? And I think it would be alarming for people to say, oh, this is 2 million all of a sudden, right?
Mhm.
And now it's 1.5. So I think
Right.
that should be alarming to council and residents. And I don't know if that needs to be codified, is what I'm saying, because I hope that we recognize and say,
No,
oh,
but
look
these
at
are
that,
just
like,
things that people need to be aware of.
absolutely.
I really think we need to throw some examples at this from like a business continuity situation. So if we can take some real life, maybe some situations, take some numbers, of what will happen if this occurred, and then how do we handle it? And how does the document handle it? I really think we need to take some live situations and test it out before we put it in the site.
And not that that gets codified into the.
No, but we
it
can
is-
help us do a walkthrough situation.
Right.
Let's use the B, right, like ignore the A because that's emergency, right? So let's use the 5% currently in the language. Saying that that's funds cannot exceed that amount, right, which is currently, let's say, $400,000 for the sake of argument, right?
I'll be truthful.
Let's use that as an example.
I still need some examples on how this is working, not these little things. We really need some live situations, not these one-off scenarios, but sit down, give me numbers that we have in our scenario and say, if this happened, how does this help us? How does this hurt us? How do we pull funds out 2 years down when we just depleted it? Trying to understand the impact that this will have to us. That's a good idea.
Yeah, I like that too.
And again, it's just going back to the business continuity situation of throwing some examples together, different situations, and how does this document handle it? And see that, well, maybe we need to add this or remove that, but I really think we need some live situations and some examples to work through it with some live numbers to assist us to see if we want to move forward with this.
That might be why it's maybe a good idea to move this off to July, because then you'll have the budget done and you have those numbers.
Yeah,
And,
I am okay with that. There's no urgency for me to
because
pass it.
this doesn't have to be done by the end of the budget year. This can be implemented anytime.
I hope it gets passed before the calendar year end or earlier, so that, because one of the provisions in capital infrastructure, I'm okay postponing this. I think I said that already. But one of the things calling there is for the 5-year plan of, the capital improvements. So like just for that's my biggest kind of goal there. So we can start projecting strategically for more than just 1 year of, what we as a city need. So we can start, think about those expenses and
So, like,
revenues and.
I think what I hear people saying is that we're suggesting that we table this ordinance until after the budget is completed. Is that what I'm hearing?
And maybe we need to have a separate meeting, maybe just on this to say what's happening with it and
What
how
would
it's
it, how would this act force the city to respond if this happened or if
Correct.
that happened? If,
And not just as it happens, but the year after.
right.
What's the impact?
Yeah, I mean, the biggest, I think we can do that. I'm gonna say my.
They're both
comments
on the
at that
next two agendas because they've already been posted, but
Mhm.
they were gonna postpone the
We're gonna
conversation.
table this.
Yeah.
until-
I'm gonna just talk to Brian right now. If he's okay with that, because I'm not the only sponsor of this, so.
Yeah, let's come up with some examples.
So we're gonna table
Start with the
that.
example of 75,000 in regards to,
Oh, what we just talked today?
Yeah, that's a sort of an easy example, and then another potential example would be a localized natural disaster. And a third scenario might be, the economy tanks and unemployment's at 6% and so on. How would this deal with that?
Yeah, you have a minor, a medium, and a
Yeah,
yeah,
and some are localized and some are
national.
national.
You
Because
guys
all
wanna
of
do this
that-
after the fiscal year, so just so sort of for the agenda, like, the
Yeah.
next 2 meetings.
No, so we're not gonna, I think what we're saying is we're gonna table this until after the budget's completed. Is that agreeable to
Okay.
everyone?
Yes.
Okay,
So we'll pick this back up in July or August.
yes. Okay. Ordinance 554 is about the senior citizens real property tax exemption.
I made, the revisions that we talked about at the council meeting, but it was included.
Read in the package or?
Yeah, there it is. So it leaves the limits at 25, the income limits at 25 and 40 as originally proposed. Oh, it adds the shall be increased each year based on the social security cost of living adjustment. Which we voted on last time.
I don't see that.
On page 2 of ordinance 554.
Okay, I see.
And then the other thing that was added is in section 4, that the deadline for application for tax relief is extended to September 1st, 2025. Do we need to say, and then we'll revert to the May 1st?
No, because we already have, section B or, letter B under the first part for 2021-1, where it says, it already has that language,
Okay,
that written application prior to September 1st for 50 fiscal year 1970.
1970.
yeah,
It wasn't 25.
so I guess that's when this was
1970 year.
originally,
This is when it was originally started, gotcha.
Yeah.
I'm like,
but the other thing we discussed last time was in section 221A, raising the amount of the assessed value to be exempted for those who qualify based on the income. And with the new assessed values, 32,000 is not, when properties were assessed at $60,000, $80,000, 32,000 was a significant chunk of their assessed value to be excluded. Now, it's not with the new assessments. So do we want to consider changing that 32,000, and if so, to what?
I think I'm still gonna stick to my proposal from last meeting, keeping the county 173,000, because it's currently in our budget projections that we're seeing. And the impact would be even smaller on our budget than currently that it is, because they have 230 parcels that are eligible. I don't think we would have very many because their income threshold is higher than ours. I think it's $65,000, I believe, and
So the county has already dropped 173,000 of assessed value for the properties that meet the requirements for county senior citizen tax relief.
yes, and that's what we're having in our file currently, like the
Because
numbers
they-
that were presented.
don't
is
even-
already
The
have
county doesn't even have an income tax. Senior,
It does.
They haven't seen
It
it
has.
yet.
they have a
Income and
senior
age.
discount, I don't think
It's an
so.
income.
Yes.
There's,
School tax is an income.
They have one.
We have a senior discount.
but it's,
Yeah.
it's
No,
an
no,
income.
Is it-
no,
is
what
it-
Council President is saying is that there's an income threshold associated with the 173,000 exemption, and that is accurate.
Okay, but there's a flat 500 exemption for any, oh, that's the school tax exemption.
Save
The flat 500 for anybody over 65 regardless of income.
Yeah, I have it right here. Let me
I
just.
have
get
a
the-
relative out the one, it does have an income.
The applicant's
The
income
the
does
county
not,
tax.
does
I'm
not exceed
confusing- I was
65,000 a year,
confusing the county with the school. The school is the flat 500 exemption with no income tax, means
Income requirements.
no income requirements.
And one thing like the one that they have that we don't have in ours is that the assessed value of applicant's real property does not exceed $676,000. So like, you're not eligible based on that as well. So like, I don't know if that changes anything for us because we don't have that limitation. There's no property value limitation on ours. But I was looking through this the other day. That'll be the only check to make. I don't know. It's like the higher valued house
I
would
understand.
not be eligible for it.
Right.
So what is the county at? You said 173 or?
173, exactly. They do a partial one too, so like, if you share a household with somebody else. 50%, right, like then it's gonna be half of that, so you'll see houses just, 87,000 or so. In there, I believe. or
We do
something like
this,
that.
we have the same.
But I'm saying that's already part of the county, like,
Yeah.
the file is already a county.
Same as far as like partial, like if, like.
Oh, 'cause the
like
32
wife
would be
Has a couple.
60
It
now.
will.
Yeah, well,
But it's-
but when,
But
Or
what
if
he's
it's part of
saying
the
is
two-thirds,
it's
yeah,
already
it's already baked in.
reflected
we're not husband and wife.
in the county, in the numbers we have from the county, they've already deducted the 173 from anyone who currently qualifies for the exemption. And since they have a higher income level than we do, that means probably fewer properties have that 173 exemption for us.
So I propose keep the same 173 exemption, but then we just have to look at your income eligibility to reduce 220 parcels to, I don't know, 100, let's say.
Well, at our,
Oh, I'm just-
what
I
are,
have no
what
idea.
is the county income level?
65,000.
65, and we're proposed for individual or couple?
I think it's just the
It's passive, it's both.
same. There's
Oh, they
just
don't
income.
distinguish, they have one level.
Mhm.
Applicant's income does not exceed 65 per year, or if the applicant is married, the spouse's combined income does not exceed 65
Oh,
per year.
okay, so theirs is a flat six. So ours is less than half that. If we keep the 25 and the 40 is not less than half, since we do distinguish between a
Mhm.
single individual and a couple.
That's kind of what I'm proposing, but I did want to just check, did we ask county to provide us the applicants of those 220 reduced parcels to provide us the income, or at least the threshold of the income?
I did ask, but I didn't get the
Okay,
income.
because that would help kind of like
Yeah,
figure it out.
I don't know
you
if that's
Okay.
something we can really provide.
Well, I think we can ask them to provide, would they meet 40, would they meet 25? Like, they don't have to give us a salary, they're not willing to do that, but we can ask, can you identify for those
Yeah,
220?
I asked, but they did not.
Because they're not providing anything there that indicates actual salary, but just.
Yeah.
Yes or no,
That's
okay, it's less than this current, so we will add a little more revenue in our budget once we go through application process. What was that?
I don't see how it adds more revenue to our budget once you make these
Because you're-
adjustments.
Because the eligibility of the county is up to $65,000 and ours is currently at 40 and 25, so like we would have less parcels.
We'd have
eligible
fewer people
for.
qualify.
And currently we're counting all 222 from counties in our budget
That's more
like,
important too.
numbers right now, so we would
That's
add, I
right.
don't know how much, but
So if we raise this,
10,000 in revenue.
32,000 to 173,000, it would, to the extent it impacted our budget projections, we would have more income than we're currently projected rather than less because of the higher county income levels.
Yeah, correct. And if we keep it at 32 or some other number, then we're adding more revenue. Any number less than 173, we're adding more in our revenue because our assessed value is going up in the sheets that we're seeing by X amount of money. So that's the ultimate.
Can we discuss the 40,000 for a couple? There's a reason why we can't make that 50. I mean, if it's 25, it was 15 and 30, so it's double the amount. If you do 25, why can't we make that 50?
I think it was an CPI index number, right?
Well, the CPI index number, I think, was 46.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Um,
we stopped talking about it, yeah.
it's on, you continue to page through that. It's there.
We were
46.
discriminating against someone that's a couple. Is there any way that we can move that to 50?
I personally think you should also increase the individual. 25,000 is really low.
Yeah, so, right, the way it was at $15,000, that's poverty right now. And, you know,
25 is.
yeah, I was gonna say,
Not much better.
right,
Yeah.
so,
I'm okay with it being 30 and 50 myself.
So-
I mean, that's
30 and 60? 30 and 60?
I think
I-
the theory, I think the theory behind making the couple less than double the individual is the old two can live cheaper than one, because you're not paying double rent. You have double food costs and maybe higher utility costs, but you don't have double rent or mortgage costs because the two people share it. But I think that's the theory behind it. I'm
Yeah.
not saying I agree.
I was thinking, the overarching thought was to do something and to move this forward, because the last was done in 2007. But certainly, you know, if it's the will of council to increase it to 50 or, 30 and 50, I would do that, or certainly we can possibly revisit it next year. To see how this program goes and to also, accurately project the central revenue loss for the city.
Right.
I mean, the easiest way to do is to match our policy to the counties, right? To make it 65 for both, because then the numbers we receive from county every time we have reassessment would literally be the same, numbers. I'm not saying we have to go with that, but, we're currently running numbers and our projections by Courtney and Antonina, and we're talking about these revenues, and that would just be unchanged if we made it 65.
Yeah, but.
But I don't know what that means.
The
in
county
like
exemptions are
revenue.
still not final.
Mhm.
They're still working through the exemptions on their end, so
Yeah.
it may change.
That's a drastic change from 30 to 65, so that like.
So how are they doing 65 across the board though?
County has
So
more
this- I don't know, like
parcels,
Yeah, I mean,
The county has more parcels, so I think.
Understood, but they're not doing it by an individual or how?
No, they chose 65, 65.
Yeah, they just named,
too.
they list them both separately, but it's the same amount listed
But
here.
if we go with what Norman was just saying, like, we already adopted the county numbers, if you're adopting the same income, if the county has, I think the spreadsheets had 400 parcels, you're now allowing 400 people to come in. You're giving them
220 is the number.
whatever.
Yeah. I
Yeah,
know, yeah.
you're now almost tripling, maybe,
Mhm.
your number
Does the
of the
county,
people coming in, that's gonna now have.
Right.
I totally understand it, but I'm saying like we're right now doing the break even number with the already county numbers. That's kind of what I'm arguing. Like we're already, this whole time, the four numbers that we have presented
No, I
are already
understand.
using county 220
I totally get what you're saying.
exemptions, so like that's kind of.
but it's
my
a
argument.
lower, that's a lower percentage of the county's total revenue than it would be a total percentage of our total revenue,
Yes.
because they have so many more tax parcels than we do.
I would rather err on the side of caution and commit to looking at this next year. Because we don't wanna, create a program and pull it back.
No,
Yeah, but we can't keep it at 32.
No, I'm not saying that.
And let's look at this in whole. So again, I think what we've heard is that we shouldn't be at 32. We're looking at the county numbers at 173, right?
right.
So, and in looking at that, and so some of the areas I'm looking at in the county or in the city, that I would expect that there may be problems, you know what I mean, with affordability and everything. I mean, you have perhaps houses or properties that are in the $220,000 range and the $300,000 range. So $220,000, now you're only taxing that individual on, we'll say 50,000.
Right,
You know what I mean, which is a much lower rate. So when you're messing with both of the factors, it kind of makes it weird, I think. You know what I mean?
We're
But if
currently using the 50 right now is what I'm saying for that particular example. That's,
Yeah.
you know what I mean, like.
If we go at 173, I mean, I would agree that, I mean, I know 25 and 50 are low, but I do agree that we should do that this year, see where we're at. If we have to make adjustments in the future, we make adjustments. But again, on 50,000, your tax bill is pretty low.
right.
I mean, you know, I mean, I could calculate it real quick, but on a $50,000 assessment, your tax bill is pretty low.
I have a question. Does the county have a cost of living adjustment built into their income level?
No.
Does anybody know?
Not in the
No.
language that.
So we voted to include that. So if we change this to 25 and 50, left it at 25,
50 is going to increase the,
50 for a couple, I mean.
oh, okay.
25 for an individual and go ahead and double it and make it 50 instead of 40 for a couple. If we did that and then raised the part that's excluded to 173, see how it goes this year, how many people qualify with the new limits, what kind of a hit it makes on our revenue. And
Do you know how they came up with the 173?
I don't, but like I mentioned this last meeting, that the number, if we're going back for percentages, should be 205 exempted number, because like 32 out of average household value in 83, which was like 47,000, same percentage is 205. So like, just to bring that out there.
Sure
The
thing.
173 is even lower. So I'm guessing they went with the percentage, but they have a bigger base of parcels. So that's why, how they came up with 170. You know what I mean? Because ours is 32 off of, I don't know, 47. I cannot remember right now, average property value in 83. And I did percentage of it and then applied the same percentage to current average to get the.
Yeah,
Like
I was
205.
looking at it as like a, it's the number of times the assessable value increased, and it was about 5%, I think.
I think.
It's 5 times more.
So like 5 times 32.
It's like 160.
That's, yeah, I'm okay with that logic too. Like
Yeah.
that should pretty much even each other out anyways. Like,
so,
so 32, what Antonina just said, if we go by the amount of times houses increased, which is 5, that would be $60,000 number. If we wanted to have a second proposal on the table that's smaller than county, but goes off of the increase of
Yeah.
inflation, like how much things got,
but since the county 173 is already built into the numbers that we have, we sort of know what the impact would be. And if we.
Give or take, because they're not final,
No,
but
sure, but if we stuck with the 170, change 32 to 173, keep the 25 and raise the 40 to 50. And then see how it goes, and we do have our cost of living adjustment built in for the future.
I'm personally okay with that. I'm happy to vote on it, but I understand it, like our 173 logic would be 160 because of the
Right,
ratio.
anyway.
I don't know what.
I mean,
We're going to use it, so yeah, I agree.
some properties went up ×5, some went up ×9, some went up
I'm
×10.
just saying overall.
On average.
Overall, the average is 0.5, is ×5.
So I'm just saying like the total taxable value, assessed value rather,
Oh,
went up about 5
oh,
times.
5 times. So we would be exceeding that a bit by going to
By
173
Yeah.
instead of 160.
I just didn't know how the county came up with that.
I think.
No, I don't, there's,
It doesn't matter. I'm just curious.
yeah, it doesn't talk about the reasoning.
No, I don't see anything.
So do we have a motion for some combination of this?
Brian, were you about to say something before I make a motion?
I'm just really excited that it seems like we're doing this. I would personally like to make the early side of caution go with the 160,000, but if it's still on the council of 173 to get this out, I would do it. I think this is a really good program.
I guess I'm okay with both numbers. My only argument towards 173 is that whatever revenue we're losing, we already have baked it in the numbers we've been seeing. That's kind of the only thing, even income wise, like even if this goes higher than 25, the revenue that we're leaving on the table is still lower than, because we know county's bases there, 222 parcels off of 65,000. So we're gonna have, I don't know how many, but we'll have some parcels less
Right,
that are not eligible
People
there
whose income
by
is less
income
than-
alone.
less than 25 or
Um,
40, but yeah, less than 65, but still over 25 or 40.
But I agree, our revenue sources, our revenue in general as counties not comparable, so we're not talking apples to apples in that sense because our, but whatever loss we have from this, it's baked into, I guess, already, because we're
Into
have
our-
a, yes,
Into our
whatever that is, even if it's $300,000, I'm making up a number. Our projections accounting for that loss already too, I guess is kind of my point.
That's a question. A resident comes in, what are they providing to show them? Is it 20, because this is for the middle of the year, so are they showing 2024 numbers?
The tax return.
Their taxes.
To get the exemptions, there's deadlines. So you can't, you know what I mean? You have to have your exemption request in, I believe it's before April 1st.
May-
Right, but what is the
County
number
numbers.
based upon?
So, but you have to bring in your tax returns from the
Your
previous years.
previous taxes.
So should we,
Or if you don't file your taxes, you have to come like the disability, you gotta have that. Yeah,
so do
or.
we need to state that in here is from the prior year?
It'll be on the application form.
Okay. Thank you.
So I personally like 173, a little better than 160. I see the reasoning for 160, but given that we were working for over a month on these numbers and seeing 173 already part of it, and our income's already much lower than, significantly lower than counties, I'm okay with the number just because of the 205 number as well, so it's kind of in between those two somewhat.
So does somebody want to make a motion?
I'll make a motion to amend ordinance 2025-554 221.1A from 32,000 to 173,000. And then to remain for a single
Property owner.
property owner for the net amount to be 25,000 and for the couple to be 50, to be changed to 50,000.
Second.
All in favor? Oh,
Or is it amendment, sorry.
that was just the amendment. So the amendment is approved to change the income level, the amount of assessed value to be excluded to 173,000 and to change the income level for a couple to 50,000 and leave the income level for the individual at 25. Okay, so now we're ready to vote on the ordinance. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay, we do need a roll call for that, Ms. Waring, please.
Okay, we need a motion.
Oh, is there a motion to approve ordinance 554 as amended?
Second.
Okay, Ms. Waring, would you call the roll, please?
Yes. Council President Suzanne Souter,
Yeah.
Councilperson Joseph Day,
Yes.
Councilperson Nerman Zubaka,
Yes.
Councilperson Andrew Zelt,
Yes.
Councilperson Brian Mataway.
Yes.
Okay, we got something?
This is an important one, so I really want to thank you guys because this is the stuff we want to raise tax.
This is
It's the important
part.
Mr. Phil, can you and staff make sure this update is put on the website? We put it in the crier, can we advertise it in the weekly?
It'll go everywhere.
With a new deadline, yeah.
Yep.
thank
So the next item,
Facebook.
yeah. The next item on the agenda is the ordinance 555. We have a public hearing next week. We don't need to talk about that tonight. The only reason it was there was to say we have a public hearing for next week.
Oh, this is to reduce the
Disability.
penalties,
Oh, sorry.
so next week, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then number 6 is,
No, it's to approve the tax rate, approve the budget.
Oh, okay, I was going next in this booklet. I see there's a different item.
Yeah.
okay, and now there's the first reading of ordinance 557. Which I will read, and as usual with the first reading, That's it, no discussion, and it's on next week's agenda. Is that correct?
Yes, for the public hearing as well.
Okay.
Time's our meeting next week, Penny.
6:30 for the public hearing, the regular meeting will be at
That's on Thursday, right?
Thursday. We
But
have a
we-
meeting on the 25th to talk last minute details. 26th will be public hearing at 6:30, regular meeting at 7.
And the 25th is 6:30, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, ordinance number 557, an ordinance to amend the City of Newcastle Municipal Code regarding the disability property tax exemption. Whereas the Council of the City of Newcastle, City Council, possesses the authority to adopt, amend, modify, or repeal the City of Newcastle Municipal Code, City Code. And whereas the City of Newcastle recognizes the burden real property taxes may have on disabled citizens who are often on a fixed income. And whereas the existing property tax exemption for disabled citizens has not been adjusted since 2007. And whereas the City Council finds that a moderate adjustment to real estate property tax exemption for residents with disabilities in the City of Newcastle is prudent and appropriate and in the best interest of the city and its residents. Now therefore, making the express finding that the provisions of this ordinance enhance and promote the health, safety, and welfare of the City of Newcastle, be it ordained by the Council of the City of Newcastle as follows. Section 1, City Code, Chapter 221, Taxation, Article 3, Disabled Persons Exemption, Section 221-11. Conditions for exemption on real property taxes hereby amended as follows. With new language identified in bold and underlined and deleted, text shown by a bold strike through text. 221-1. Conditions for exemption on real property tax. Every resident who is disabled as defined by section 221-10 and who has become disabled prior to July 1st of the fiscal year for which the exemption is sought, and who or whose spouse resides in a house owned by him or her, which is his or her principal residence, shall be entitled to an exemption from all real property taxes exclusive of local sewer and ditch taxes to an assessed valuation on said residence and land annexed thereto, not exceeding 32,000, providing that his her income does not exceed $25,000 per year, or where he or she has a spouse who either lives with him or her in his or her principal residence, or because of mental or physical infirmity lives in a healthcare facility, the combined income of the two of them does not exceed $40,000 per year. B, this amount shall be adjusted annually based on the cost of living adjustment COLA as provided by the Social Security Administration. C, no person shall be entitled to exemption from taxation unless he or she shall have made written application therefore prior to September 1st, 2025 for the fiscal year July 1st, 2025 to June 30th, 2026, prior to May 1st of each subsequent year for the fiscal year beginning the following July 1st. D, the council, I assume it's and the mayor, or council of the mayor and council of Newcastle,
The council and.
council and, yeah.
and
The council
Mayor
and
and
the
council.
and the mayor and council of Newcastle may by resolution prescribe forms upon which application for exemption from taxation under this article shall be made. Section 2, if any section, subsection, sentence, clause, or phrase of this ordinance is for any reason held to be unconstitutional or invalid, such decision shall not affect the validity of the remaining portions of this ordinance. Section 3, in the event any existing ordinances or parts of ordinances are in conflict herewith, the provisions of this ordinance shall control. Section 4, this ordinance shall become effective immediately upon its adoption and approval, and the deadline for application for the tax relief is extended to September 1st, 2025. Okay, public comments. The usual rules, please sign in, and you have 3 minutes. To discuss it.
No.
Oh, I think.
Next clerical time. Revisions or effect.
Thank you.
Go.
Few comments, on the assessments. The city still has some unknowns in terms of the total assessed value. One is an accurate listing of which properties have appealed and how much they have appealed for. The current listing on which the calculations are being based has a very modest amount of appeals. I'm sure it's wrong. I'm sure the county has not yet provided the actual amount at risk. So I think that city should be aware of that and I urge the city to try to obtain that information from the county as quickly as possible, because the budget is going to be based on the assessments. Second, on the senior and disabled portions in the county list, there's about $44 million of assessed value within the city that is exempt. All those 173,000 times, 200, et cetera. And I understand the comments so far, but with the increases in taxes and the changes in tax rates, no one knows whether there are qualified individuals who have not previously applied who will say, wow, my tax bills, gosh, it's no longer something minor. And they're going to get these notices that are publicized. So it may, there may be more people that apply than even are listed. So true, the city will have a lower income limit than the county. So you have some protection there. But until September 1st, you won't really know how many people will have applied. And the city hopes that everyone who needs the help will know about it and will. And then the last thing that I would recommend to the city is to obtain, if at all possible, the Tyler Technologies neighborhood maps, because Tyler Technologies has computed assessment accuracy statistics for regions and zones and the county as a whole, but also for neighborhoods. Some of those neighborhoods are within the city of Newcastle, and it would provide helpful information to inform council when council starts to get the inevitable phone calls and complaints and what about taxes. Just more knowledge is better on accuracy statistics. Finally, protection and security for government officials, elected and staff. Don't ignore it. Minnesota.
Bill Gross, 1301 13th Street. I'm really glad you guys did meet with Nicole Poor and had the trustees involved. Because I think you really need some guidance on a couple areas you're way off base. When it comes to the senior discount, it should be 25 and 40. There is no reason to bump it up to 50. Second, June 26th with the meeting, again, I'm going to implore you that when the students and whatever you're doing with the site, you must get that reverse notification thing in force. Because without that, you are not giving the city residents a full chance to be notified of stuff. I don't care what you put in your bill. There's a lot of renters and a lot of people that have opinions. The weekly's useless unless you want to waste money on subscribing. So there's a big segment that I don't even think if Day and Zelt went around door to door could possibly hit enough places, residents to notify them. Dog park. Unfortunately, I was late. Is that still in the budget? and the paving?
Please.
Okay, what you're doing is, you're not focusing on cutting. The mayor basically said 17,000, not a lot, or this, not a lot. But if you start getting things together, that dog park and the paving that was bait and switch moved to another category should not go through. Should, with the current situation that we have, should not go through. Get it privatized, do like they did with the playground. I can give you many examples of municipalities that went around and got sponsors for it. And you guys are gonna probably, this side of the table, push it through. It should not go through. Again, advertising, the mayor's budget should be brought back to the amount that it was before it was raised last year or 2 years ago. I firmly believe that the Sea Rise Committee should be disbanded temporarily. They didn't even have a quorum last night. I rushed back from Washington and got there, didn't have a quorum. That's how much they care. As far as rollback, it's great, but it's not gonna be enough. You're gonna have to implement the taxes all at once this year. And it goes where it goes. That's all. Thank you.
Anyone else? All right, I think we're set. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So move.
A second?
Thanks.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Meeting's adjourned.
Vote to adjourn.
I voted to get you.
Thanks for coming.
Thanks, everybody.
I thought you might say something.